Welcome to the Forever in Their Hearts podcast with Dale Martin Jr., brought to you by Martin Brothers, providing funerals designed and customized to be as special as your loved one lost. Now, here's your host.
Well, yes, this is your host, Erik Reynolds, and I'm back again with Valerie Martell, Director of Operations for Martin Brothers Funeral Services. And today, Valerie will be discussing taking the mystery out of what happens to your loved one at a funeral home. Now, before Valerie joins us, just as a reminder, if you have questions or require assistance, you can reach Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Vancouver at 778-330-7799. Again, that's 778-330-7799. Well, Valerie, it's great to be talking with you again today.
Nice to talk to you, Erik.
Now, Valerie, this is a great discussion, because people often may wonder what happens with their loved one when the funeral home picks them up from the hospital, the care home, or other place of death. Now, today we're going to discuss, the process and hopefully get some answers to those questions. So let me ask you this. I don't really know what goes on between the time you take my loved one into your care and the burial or cremation. Now, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Erik. Well, first of all, we have what we call our commitment rose ceremony. And what that is when we pick someone up from the care home, from the hospice, or wherever they have passed, from the house even, families phone us, of course, or maybe the nurse has phoned us or whatever. And we come out, and it's our staff. We take your loved one directly into our care. And what we've heard from families in the past is like, Mom sort of disappeared. Someone came to pick her up. I don't know where she went to. I don't really know who really got her. So our commitment rose process is this. We place a red rose on the pillow once we pick someone up, and it's got a little note attached to it. And what the note says is, your loved one is now in our care. And you can phone us. Here's our number, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just know that we're caring for your loved one like one of our own. And when we bring someone into our care like that, we're available, as I said, 24/7 for questions. We tell you where your loved one is. They're always in our care. Everyone that we bring into our care is bathed, they're dressed, and they're cared for. And that's important. You've been around your loved one all their life, and you tend to know where your loved one is, and then they pass, and suddenly you've left them in someone else's care, and we take that very seriously. So just know that. Just know that everyone is treated with respect and with care. And the reason we can ensure that is because your loved one is always with us.
Now, Valerie, I've got a question, and maybe a little off the wall, but, sometimes we don't have a public viewing, but from what I understand, we still have to bring in clothing for the deceased. So why do I need to bring clothing in when I'm not having a public viewing?
Well, certainly the clothing, Erik, is about dignity and respect, because in reality, when we're dealing with your loved one, it's our staff dealing with your loved one, and just the idea of having somebody clothed is part of their dignity and respect, and their individuality. Everyone is different, and if you're walking down the street, what makes each of us different? Except maybe funeral directors, we're all wearing black all the time. But what makes everyone different is that everyone kind of has their own style. So you might bring in not necessarily a suit. You might bring in your loved one's favorite hockey jersey and jeans. Bring in something that makes sense to you and shows your loved one's personality, even if you're not having a public viewing. Reason being, when we're dealing with your loved one, they're in their own clothing. They're actually clothed. They're not in maybe the hospital gown like you've seen them in for a long time. And like I said before in your last question that you had asked me, everyone that comes into our care is bathed. Everyone who comes into our care is dressed. And you might indicate to us that you don't wish to view. That's fine. But you know what also is fine? It's okay to change your mind. You might say at the last minute, you know what? I really do need to view. Guess what? We're ready for that. We have your loved one in our care. We've bathed them. We've dressed them. We've got their hair combed and curled if it needs to be curled. We've got some cosmetic on them. so that they look, good for all intents and purposes. So we're ready if you change your mind and you say, I do need to see mom, or I do need to see dad. That's part of why you bring in clothing.
Well, let me ask you this. How do I ensure that it's my loved one that you have in your care? I mean, you don't know them as well as we do, of course. So how do I know that it's my loved one you have?
Yeah, that's a really valid concern, Eric. Certainly because, the deceased can't speak for themselves. So we need to be very sure ourselves. So what we really encourage is we encourage viewing. Number one, it gives you peace of mind to know that, yes, that person that you knew, that you loved, you've got the peace of mind that that's the person in our care. Some people in the family might need that opportunity to say the final goodbye. The other thing is, if you choose not to view, if you really decide, you know what, I just don't want to view, no one from the family wants to view, well, we use the hospital identification, the care home identification. Everybody who comes into our care has some form of identification attached to them. We always, if you're not going to view, we always ask for a photo so we can make comparisons. So I can go in, it's going to be me, if I'm meeting with you as a family, that I can go in and I can take a look at the photo and I can compare it. You might say, oh yeah, Dad has an anchor tattoo on his right shoulder, and I'll go and I'll look and I'll make sure that that's him. And like I said before, your loved one is always in our gentle care. We have our own crematorium. We have our own care facility where we look after your loved one. So it's only us. It's only our staff that is looking after your loved one. So we make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. We know that that's your loved one in our care before cremation takes place, before burial takes place, of course.
Well, let me ask another unique question. For the service and with the casket, can I ask the funeral home to place things in the casket with my loved one? Maybe something personal?
Absolutely. The industry has really responded to this. Many caskets these days actually have something that's called a memory drawer. And it's a little drawer in the casket that provides the family with some really beautiful stationery and little stickers to close your letter once it's written. And you can have the kids write letters to Grandma, let's say, and we can enclose them in that drawer. What families are often doing these days is having the kids maybe color some pictures or put their favorite little toy in with Grandma. And we encourage that, because what that does is it gives people the opportunity to, give a little something, give Grandma a little send-off. And so yes, by all means. I've had families say, hey, can we put Dad's 9-iron in there? Sure, why not? If it's something he loved in life, he might need that somehow. It's a comfort thing. Some people like to enclose a teddy bear, for instance, or some other something that means a lot to the deceased or means a lot to them. So yes, by all means, you can place something in the casket with your loved one. That's not a problem at all. In fact, we encourage it.
Well, Valerie, along with that, what about cremation? Maybe we can put items in the casket, but can you cremate items with my loved one? And what happens to the things that I place with my loved one?
Well, yeah, certainly it's the same thing as burial. You can certainly put items in. With cremation, there's a little bit of a limitation because of the cremation process. So, you may not want to put that 9-iron in because that's not going to work out very well. But we still encourage it. We still encourage it as a way of grieving. Place those things in. Children placing the pictures and all that is perfectly fine. And really what happens with those items is they get cremated along with your loved one, and it's perfectly fine. The pictures and things are quite fine. What we often tell families, though, is, families will sometimes want to bury beautiful jewelry, and that's perfectly fine. With cremation, we say to families, you know what, we're not going to cremate those beautiful rings, but what we'll do, if you really want those with your mom, let's say she always had her wedding rings on and it's important that they go with her, we'll actually do the cremation, and then we'll place that jewelry right in the urn. Reason being, we don't want to place that into the crematorium because what if you change your mind and you say, oh, you know what, I do want Mom's rings back? Well, too late. If they're cremated, they're destroyed pretty much. So what we say is we'll do the cremation, and then we can place small things into the urn, and that's not a problem at all. We'll place them in a little velvet jewelry pouch and right into the top of the urn, and that way, let's say you change your mind, we can go back into the urn and we can take that jewelry out and we can give it back to you. But no, anything else you want to place in there, it would be just the same as burial. You can go ahead and do that, and we encourage it, in fact.
Well, Valerie, before we close out this episode, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I do, yeah. One thing that I just want to make sure that your audience is aware of, like I said before a few times, your loved one is always in our gentle care, and we take that very, very seriously. Just other things, a couple of times when you asked the questions today, you said, kind of with hesitation, I might ask, this might be a bit of a question. That's okay. People need to know that the mystery surrounding the funeral industry doesn't need to be there. We're pretty open. Ask us the questions. If you're concerned about something, go ahead and ask us, because we'd be more than happy to answer it. People, with this day and age, with the internet, there's so much information out there, but there still remains a bit of mystery around the funeral industry. And you can read all kinds of things on the internet, but it's perfectly fine to go ahead and ask those questions, because what's important to us is that you are comfortable. Because when you're not comfortable, you're going to be wondering, and this is an important time in people's lives, so we want to make it as comfortable for them as possible. We want people to be informed as informed as they possibly can be, and we want people to know that we take what we do very seriously, and that their loved one is safe in our care.
Well, Valerie, again, I've learned some valuable information. It's really answered some questions that myself and maybe many of our listeners are wondering about. So thank you again for your experience, and thank you for your knowledge. Now, for the listener, can you think of someone who might benefit from what we've covered today? They'll thank you for forwarding this episode on to them. Now, if you have questions or require assistance, you can reach Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Vancouver at 778-330-7799. Again, that's 778-330-7799, or visit their website, very helpful website, at www.mbfunerals.com. Again, that's www.mbfunerals.com. Well, Valerie, as always, for myself, for the listeners, thanks again for the conversation.
Thanks, Erik.
You've been listening to the Forever in Their Hearts podcast with Dale Martin Jr. from Martin Brothers Funeral Services. Our 4 generations of service in the funeral profession have equipped us with a legacy of understanding. In your hour of need, Martin Brothers is there. Call Martin Brothers in Vancouver today at 778-330-7799 and visit them online at www.mbfunerals.com.